Good evening, morning, afternoon, midnight snack time, whenever it is you happen to be tuning in. And thank you for giving my new crime podcast a listen for the very first time. Since this is the very first one, just a small introduction. So, my name is Laura. I live in the Indianapolis area. With my podcast series, I want to try to keep most of at least my beginning podcasts focused on cases that took place here in Indiana. In part, that is because I would like to help bring awareness here in my community of some cases that may have faded from the public's memory. Also, I really like the idea of potentially being able to visit the sites where some of these cases took place. I think having sometimes that firsthand knowledge of particular geographical areas or community culture can help to provide a narrower lens regarding the facts of a case. I first became interested in crime podcasts and mini crime documentaries after coming across several here on YouTube. I'm always intrigued by crime stories. I just think it's interesting, especially in situations where a case has not yet been solved, to try to put the pieces together and see what conclusions you can come to. But I can also really appreciate that many of these podcasts and mini web documentaries have a unique opportunity to shed light on cases that may have become cold. They can also help spread awareness of specific cases that the mainstream media and public may have largely forgotten. The people in these cases do not deserve to be forgotten, and neither do their family members, who may still be waiting on that closure. So, on to today's story. So, this particular story takes place beginning on the evening of July 3rd and into the early morning hours of July 4th in the year 1997, so quite some time ago now. 2017 actually saw the 20th anniversary of the day that Bonnie Schultz disappeared. Bonnie Schultz was a 47-year-old married mother of 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. She lived on the northwest part of Indianapolis with her husband Richard of 26 years and their 2 children in a very middle-class neighborhood. According to an article that I found printed on August 3rd, 1997 in the Indianapolis Star, friends of the family often joked that the Schultzes resembled a sitcom family like that of Leave It to Beaver, just an average, seemingly happy family of 4. Bonnie married her husband and high school sweetheart in 1970 after graduating from Sheboygan High School in Wisconsin, where they were both from. Due to Richard's Navy career at the time, they were forced to relocate multiple times. In 1985, her husband was able to get hired with and became a bank executive at National City Bank in Indianapolis, where the couple finally settled in. While Bonnie was often described as a dedicated wife and mother, her friends adamantly also describe her as being no doormat. She was 5 feet 7 inches tall, with shoulder-length brown hair. She was described as a type of woman who would do anything for her family, but she had aspirations of her own as well. She was a volunteer in her church and an active member of the Parent-Teacher Association. She had worked part-time with RGIS inventory specialist for 4 years at the time of her disappearance and had just recently taken a position with the Pike Township Trustee's office. In the Indianapolis Star article, her husband observed that she had been spending more and more time with coworkers around that time and was even planning an upcoming Caribbean cruise with a few of her female colleagues at the time that she vanished. Outside of working and volunteering, much of the rest of Bonnie's time was spent being a dedicated and loving mother to the 2 children who were just 15 and 10 years old when this all took place. Bonnie's children in multiple interviews describe her as being an active part of their lives, discussing sports, grilling outdoors with them, and playing with the family dog Piper often. She faithfully attended her son's sporting events and was planning on seeing a show with her 10-year-old daughter on the day of July 4th when she vanished. According to Bonnie's friend Janice Sorensen, Bonnie would never have made plans with her daughter if she had no intention of coming home. As happy as the family appeared from the outside, the Schultzes, like many couples, were not without their problems. 26 years of marriage seemed to have worn on Bonnie. According to her husband, she had expressed on several occasions that they were growing apart. It was becoming increasingly clear that she and her high school sweetheart were growing in different directions. Bonnie was allegedly having an affair with a male coworker, a claim that was later substantiated through police investigation, and she was decidedly unhappy remaining married to him. Richard Schultz admitted to police that the relationship was rocky and that there had been several conversations surrounding divorce. In statements provided to the police and reporters, Bonnie Schultz's then 15-year-old son stated that there was nothing unusual about the last time he saw his mother. That evening of July 3rd, he recalled her putting makeup on, preparing for an evening out with her friends. Bonnie had told her husband she was going to a coworker's house for a small birthday gathering and indicated that the friends might possibly go out somewhere after the gathering was over. The last memory her son recalled of his mother was of her giving him money to go bowling that night with his friends. He was quoted in the August 3rd, 1997 article from the Indianapolis Star as saying, "She was putting on makeup and stuff, and I told her I hoped that she would have a good time." Her son went to a friend's house that evening to spend the night, something that had been previously planned. Bonnie's 10-year-old daughter was to stay home with her father that evening. Although it is unclear what time, Bonnie's husband Richard said goodbye to her as she left in her dark blue 1990 Mercury Sable wagon to meet her friends. According to Bonnie's friends, she had arrived at the birthday party crying and visibly upset that night. She reportedly told her friends she and her husband Richard had just had a huge fight. One of the friends Bonnie confided in claimed that the disagreement was over a potential divorce. Bonnie stated that she wanted to divorce her husband of 26 years, but that he was unwilling to divorce her. She reportedly also relayed the same information to the man she was allegedly having an affair with later that night. According to an article from 2007, around the anniversary of Bonnie's disappearance, Richard Schultz confirmed that he and his wife were indeed having marital problems, and that they in fact had discussed them on the night that she disappeared. He was quoted as saying, "She made comments that her and I didn't have anything in common, and that she liked one thing and I liked doing another. Most couples, in my opinion, are that way. What they have in common is the family," said the 56-year-old Richard Schultz. "I never thought she was the type that would get up and leave and run away. She wouldn't leave her kids behind," Schultz added. "I don't think she had any thoughts of suicide or anything like that. I don't think the situation was anywhere near that desperate." After spending some time at the birthday gathering, Bonnie and her coworker Anita Cardone decided to leave the gathering a bit early and headed to a local pub known as the Timeout Lounge at 62nd Street and Allisonville Road in Indianapolis to talk and have a few drinks. They were later joined by her alleged boyfriend. It was at this bar that Bonnie mentioned once again her plans to take her daughter to a show the next day, and she was looking forward to it. Bonnie and Anita spent several hours at the Timeout Lounge that evening. Bonnie was reportedly wearing a shirt with white, light blue, and dark blue stripes, navy blue pants, sandals, a herringbone necklace, a gold watch, and a wedding ring. Bonnie's family says that she was extremely concerned about safety. She always carried a cell phone and credit cards in case of an emergency, and a tan purse that she was also carrying that evening. While at the Timeout Lounge that evening, witnesses reportedly saw Bonnie talking with two individuals, a man and a woman, that were determined to be her friend Anita and the male coworker, Bonnie's boyfriend. The two were questioned by police early on. They did indicate that Bonnie was upset that night, but that she had calmed down as the evening had progressed. The police have stated that both individuals have given full statements and have been completely cooperative. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, although this time seems to fluctuate at least slightly in a few of the articles I have found, Bonnie and Anita decided to leave the pub, both planning on going home. Anita stated that the two got into their separate vehicles to depart, and that she witnessed Bonnie driving west on 62nd Street toward an area known as Broad Ripple Village in the direction of her home, an image that she says continues to haunt her to this day. The two were supposed to work together the following day, but it was the last time she or anyone else reportedly ever saw her friend again. Anita was quoted by the Indianapolis Star in 2003 as saying, "It has been so hard because I miss her, and I expect to see her every single day. We would sit together at break times and shoot the breeze. She always talked about her kids. They meant everything to her." Bonnie's husband stated that on the morning of July 4th, he was not immediately concerned not to see his wife, as they had slightly opposite work schedules. He made the comment that it was not uncommon to wake up and for Bonnie not to be there. It was not until around noon, when he had still not seen his wife, that Richard Schultz began to become concerned about her whereabouts. Around mid-afternoon on July 4th, 1997, Richard filed a missing person report with the Marion County Sheriff's Department. Richard claimed that at the time he felt distressed and helpless. He, along with Bonnie's 15-year-old son, began to try retracing her route over and over from their home to the Timeout Lounge in search of any sign of her. Richard claimed that the two drove every single parking lot in search of the dark blue 1990 Mercury Sable wagon. He told reporters that each day he and the police were monitoring her credit card and cell phone records to watch for any activity, but none ever appeared. Bonnie's birthday came and went on July 25th without her. Bonnie's friend Janice Sorensen commented to the Indianapolis Star, "Bonnie just had a birthday on Friday." Her daughter made some comments that we should go birthday shopping. I don't know what to tell her. And just as a side note, I just find that extremely sad. I can't imagine being Bonnie's friend and having to try to explain that to a 10-year-old. Also at the time of Bonnie's disappearance, her own mother was deceased, and her father was in a nursing home. Richard claimed that he tried reaching out to her siblings, 3 sisters and 1 brother, to see what they might know, but that they were equally puzzled by Bonnie's sudden absence. Just a few weeks after the missing person report was filed, another local newspaper, the Noblesville Gazette, reported that the sheriff's investigation was at a complete standstill. The police released details of Bonnie's description and vehicle, including her license plate. Despite all of this, neither Bonnie nor her vehicle was ever located. Something else I found noteworthy from an updated article from 2007. So it is no secret that when a woman goes missing, no matter what her age, the police typically look at the men in her life first as their primary persons of interest. That being said, Bonnie's husband and her boyfriend were both questioned and agreed to submit to polygraph examinations to clear themselves. Bonnie's boyfriend passed the polygraph, indicating that he did not show any deception. Later, however, when her husband took his polygraph examination, it was determined that he was being deceptive in at least some of his answers. Although polygraphs are not admissible in court, as I'm sure you've heard in about all of these podcasts and series, this coupled with the fact that the couple had been fighting that night when she disappeared just makes one more thing that does not look good for Mr. Schultz. The Indianapolis detectives working this case have openly stated that they believe foul play was involved in Bonnie Schultz's disappearance. Detective Byron of the Indianapolis Police stated in 2007, around the 10-year anniversary, the person responsible for this was pretty involved. They had a plan, not only to hide Bonnie, but to hide her entire car. I do not believe that Bonnie left her children, left her friends, and left her job, and took her car and is hidden somewhere. I don't believe Bonnie has been living somewhere the last 10 years. To this day, the police claim they have not ruled anyone out as a suspect in this case. In 2000, Bonnie's husband Richard and their 2 children moved to Michigan. The 2 children are now adults, just children when this happened, and I cannot imagine the trauma that this has caused in their lives, having to grow up without their mother, and never really knowing the basic answers as to why or what happened to her. This has to be an extremely empty void in their life. The 2 children did make comments on the 10-year anniversary. While I do not intend to be in any way critical of Bonnie Schultz's children, a couple of things that her daughter said did catch my attention. So when her mother went missing, her daughter was roughly around 10 years old, which means that at the 10-year anniversary, she was around 20. When asked questions about what she thought might have happened to her mother, she responded in a couple of ways. She was quoted as saying, "I don't think my dad did it. I don't think my brother did it." She also said she believed her mother to be dead, just due to the length of time that had passed. I tend to agree with her on that. Bonnie's daughter is a young lady who has undoubtedly dealt with a high level of turmoil in her life. The part that caught my attention in her quote is, "I don't think." I'm not a psychologist, but I do feel that if I was in a similar situation and someone was asking me if I thought that my dad or brother had murdered my mother, and I truly believed in their innocence, I think I would use more definitive language, something along the lines of, "Absolutely not. No. My father or brother would never hurt my mother." Maybe it's just me, but I found that a little strange. I don't know, just seems to leave room for doubt in my mind. Also, I would like to point out that I do not believe in any way that the son was involved whatsoever. I'm not sure how that even came into her quote, to be honest. Probably just some sort of broad speculation. It sounds as though from the children, along with family members and friends, that Bonnie had a very close relationship with her children. So I just don't see that as a very strong possibility. Further, something else interesting happened in 2008. A detective, Christner, of the Indianapolis Police Department traveled to Michigan to talk to Richard and the Schultz children, but he was reportedly not met with the cooperation he had hoped for. Richard still maintained that he knew nothing regarding his wife's disappearance. Detective Christner found that the two children were still relying heavily on their father for monetary and financial support. The oldest son was still residing with his father. He also found that the children had little to no association with any other family members besides their father. Both children refused to talk to the Detective Christner regarding their mother's disappearance, with the daughter even stating that it would not change anything. According to the Detective Christner, it is a very frustrating cold case. I have taken it very personally and have endured many sleepless nights thinking about it. It is my belief that Joshua and Gretchen would want to do anything and everything possible to locate their missing mother. I believe that their failure to cooperate is because they know their mother is deceased, and quite possibly who is responsible. Regardless, the perpetrator of this crime can rest assured that we will never give up. In my mind, this was kind of one more thing that pointed suspicion at the father a little bit. I can understand if this is a difficult topic for these children, who are now adults, of course, but if a detective traveled out of state to solve my mother's case, and over a decade after the fact, I don't know that I would have the heart to tell them that it wouldn't make a difference. The truth is, you really don't know if it can make a difference if you don't talk to them. I can't say that I understand their feelings because I've never been in those shoes. It does, however, definitely add suspicion to the father, in my opinion. I'm not sure this case will ever be solved. Cold cases get solved occasionally, but that often requires some sort of cooperation, or at least the victim being found. I have a lot of admiration for the detective for trying so hard to find out what happened to this woman. It sounds like Bonnie Schultz was human, like the rest of us, and was going through a turbulent time in her life. She did not deserve whatever it is that ultimately happened to her, and I would love to see this case get some sort of closure and, of course, justice for Bonnie. I do want to say, of course, thank you again for tuning in to my very first podcast, hopefully the first of many. I will include the links to the newspaper clippings and the articles and websites that I used if you are interested in this case. Also, if you have any information that could be helpful in solving it, please contact the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. You can call in tips anonymously. I know it can be a long shot, but you never know. It only takes one tip to break a case open sometimes. Also, if you enjoyed this podcast or found it interesting, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.